This is the second part of the episode on descending cuts. If you have not seen the first part, you should go and watch it right now. The link is in the description. Do note that the incorrect examples are exaggerated on purpose so that the issues are easier to see. In my opinion, the correct examples properly show what they are supposed to show, however, they are not in any way perfect. As an exercise, see if you can spot any issues with my form in the correct examples. If you do, go and leave a comment down below. Now that we are up to speed, let's see how to do descending cuts from the non-dominant side. From the non-dominant side, you will be doing the same 5 progressions of the basic exercise as you did from the dominant side. If you have not seen the first part of this episode, you really should go and watch it right now. The difference is that in the start position, you stand with your non-dominant foot forwards. When doing the cuts, you will first rotate towards your non-dominant side and then cut from there towards your dominant side. Once again, take your time with the progressions and only move to the next one after you are comfortable with the current one. For the most part, the common issues and their fixes stay the same as when cutting from the dominant side. In this section, I will detail the few differences there are when cutting from the non-dominant side. The big difference is that now you need to have your arms crossed. The difference becomes more pronounced when we move to horizontal cuts and then pass those to ascending cuts. For now, let's concentrate on how it affects descending cuts. From a gripping point of view, there is no difference as long as you are not cutting close to horizontal or past it. You should be able to keep a proper extension of both arms without any issues. In fact, some people feel that their structure is more solid when doing descending cuts from the non-dominant side, because now their forearms are supporting each other. A more concrete difference is that now your chest is going to be more in the way of your arms. This has few implications. Firstly, people tend to push their shoulders forwards or bend their elbows to fix this. As you should remember from the structure episode, both of these are a bad idea. You simply need to live with the small discomfort and concentrate on stabilizing your shoulders and keeping a proper extension. Another consequence is that your structure will naturally stop your cuts earlier, leaving your point more in line. This should not cause any issues, as your cut should still have more than enough arc to cut through your target. Let's take a look at targeting. From a cutting point of view, the optimal target is at shoulder height, straight in front of you. This allows you to have the maximum reach for your cut. But what if we need to cut higher or lower? There are multiple different ways to target, and they tend to work well for different situations. Now, let's imagine our target straight in front of us and our cutting arc at a 45-degree angle. As said earlier, for optimal performance, we want to impact on our target roughly at a shoulder height to maximize our reach. This is also usually the area where people naturally have the highest tip speed in their cut. At the beginning of the cut, you have to accelerate the sword and it takes at least some time. At the end, people usually start to slow down the cut. With proper training, the effective area of the cutting arc can be increased, but usually it is still the easiest to cut with the middle portion. The easiest way to target is to do it with our legs. Simply stand in a deeper or a higher stance. Naturally, the straighter your legs are and the narrower your stance is, the less stable it is and the less power you are able to generate. A deeper stance is more tiring and it may affect power generation negatively, especially if you are not used to a deep stance. However, this is a very good way to target in many situations, especially when targeting very low targets, such as legs. Simply step to a lower stance when cutting, and you will be still able to use your maximum reach. The one thing you must be aware of is the ground. If you go to a very deep stance, you might need to stop your cut with the point more in line to avoid hitting the ground. To practice this, simply do the previously explained progressions of the basic exercise in stances of a different height. The next option is to start the cut higher or lower. As the angle stays the same, the part of the arc in front of you will be at a different height based on the starting point. The idea is the same as with changing the height of our stance. Now we are simply changing the height using our arms. This has the negative effect of shortening your reach somewhat, as you are no longer hitting the target at shoulder height. This can be a very easy and an accurate way of targeting targets roughly at the height between the bottom of your ribs and the top of your head. At least personally, I find it more difficult to target very low targets using this method. To practice this, once again use the progressions of the basic exercise. When you are centering and extending your arms to cut, simply extend them to higher or lower to achieve the required target. Personally, I mostly use a combination of these two methods to target. Especially when cutting at a very low target, I use a combination of both. The next method is to cut with a different part of your cutting arc. As your cut is descending, it will go through all the possible heights between its starting and ending points. To cut with a different part of your cutting arc, you simply need to position yourself slightly to one or the other side of your target. As explained earlier, it is more difficult to generate power towards both ends of the cutting arc. In addition to this, you are also losing reach. Once again, use the progressions of the basic exercise, but when cutting, stand to one side of your target instead of in front of it. To cut lower, stand to the side you are cutting from. If you want to cut higher, stand to the side you are cutting to. When practicing this, it is recommended that you use a similar target to progressions 4 and 5 of the basic exercise to cut over. The last method to target is to change the cutting angle. The cutting angle will be discussed in more detail in the next section, but let's take a brief look. A more vertical cutting line will spend more time in the area of your target. It will also travel more vertical distance, whereas a completely horizontal cut will not travel any vertical distance at all. A vertical or almost vertical cut is well suited to hitting higher targets. Naturally, it is a poor choice for low targets. If there is anything else of your target in the way, it will hit that instead. More horizontal cuts can be useful when you need to cut under something that would otherwise be in the way. As said, how to change the cutting angle and how to practice it will be handled in the next section. For targeting training, a PEL of some kind can be an extremely valuable tool, as you can clearly see where you made contact with the target. PELs with larger target areas, such as wooden PELs, are best suited for this kind of practice. With PELs, simply use the previously explained exercises with the target. Targeting is one area of cutting which can greatly benefit from paired drills. You need a blunt sword of some kind and a training partner with the necessary protective equipment. Have your partner indicate a target using a training sword or some other target you can hit. Then proceed to cut at the target using the previously explained methods of targeting. These kinds of drills can vary greatly in difficulty. At the easiest, the training partner is a static target already at the correct distance. They indicate the target and the trainee can use as much time as they need to hit the target. A more difficult variation would be to allow the trainee only a limited time to hit the target. In this case, be very careful not to hit your training partner when they are pulling the target away. In the most difficult variation, both the trainee and the training partner are moving and the time to hit the target is very limited. You should make different kinds of targeting exercises a staple in your training regimen. Targeting is a very important skill to master. When cutting tatami or any other cutting medium, there is always some amount of targeting required. At the very least, you have to hit the target. Just hitting a tatami is not too difficult. On the other hand, hitting a small milk carton requires some level of skill. However, for now, let's just concentrate on tatami. There are multiple cutting patterns which require high levels of skill in targeting. For the basic diagonal cuts, there are two basic goals to keep in mind. As a note, this is for mats which are roughly 90 cm tall when rolled. When cutting in the same line with a 45-degree cutting angle, you should be able to fit 5 cuts in the same mat. This should be rather easy. When cutting in alternating lines with a 45-degree cutting angle, you should be able to fit 4 cuts in the same mat. Again, this should not be too difficult, but it is a good starting point. This is a very simple way to test and measure targeting skill using just the basic cuts on a tatami mat. In my opinion, these two goals are also rather well in line with the amount of targeting required when actually fencing. There are more advanced cutting patterns to test targeting. However, those often require other advanced skills or a very high level of skill with the basic cuts. Another way of adding more targeting challenge to your basic tatami cutting is to mark a smaller target area on the mat. This can be done using rubber bands or some tape. Another fun way is to place smaller cut-off pieces of tatami on top of the remaining tatami still on the stand. This is also a nice way to get more cuts out of your expensive tatami mat. We have been using the 45-degree cutting angle in this episode for practice reasons. However, you should be able to cut at any angle you choose to. Emphasis on choose to. Instead of just cutting at some random angle, you should be able to make the conscious decision about the cutting angle you are using. To start visualizing the cutting angle, I like to think of it like this. Looking at yourself from the front, you have the center of rotation between your shoulders. Using that as a center, imagine a circle with the radius of your arm length. Now you can position your hands on that circle and your cutting line is a straight line starting from your hands and going through the center. Here is an exercise for changing the cutting angle. Stand in the starting position with your dominant foot forwards. Bring your hands slightly forwards while keeping them centered and your arms extended. Now, imagine moving your hands on the circle towards your dominant side. Rotate your hips and shoulders to keep your hands centered. Keep the long edge of your sword towards the center of the circle. When you come to your desired angle, brace and tighten your grip. Cut a full cut and let your structure stop it. Stop bracing and relax your grip. Return back to the starting position. Repeat. Naturally, this can also be done from the non-dominant side. Simply have your non-dominant foot forwards. I would not recommend doing this with the first progression of the basic exercise. Start implementing this to your training starting with the second progression. Only start changing the angle after you can cut consistently with a 45-degree angle with the given progression. With this exercise, you should concentrate on keeping your trajectory straight, your edge aligned, and your hands centered. As you are now cutting with different angles, you need to learn to align your edge to suit the cutting angle. Listen for the sound wind to determine if your edge is aligned. After you can consistently get a proper edge alignment and trajectory at any angle you wish, you can start to move towards a single action cut. Basically, simply do the same thing you did with the third progression of the basic exercise. Instead of moving your hands along the imagined circle, simply go straight from overhead to the desired starting point of the cut and simultaneously tighten your grip and brace. Stop to check your grip and then cut. After you can do that, remove the pause between going to your desired starting position and cutting. The issues and fixes of this are exactly the same as the progression tree of the basic exercise. I mentioned in the first progression of the basic exercise that you should not lean to achieve the desired cutting angle. However, in actual fencing, this can sometimes be very beneficial. As such, you should also learn to cut like this. Simply leave to your side so that you achieve your desired cutting angle. Then cut using only rotation around your shoulders, just like you would when cutting with a completely vertical cut. Do note that this is mostly useful for rather steep angles. The closer you go to horizontal, the harder it becomes to keep a proper structure. Tatami and most other cutting medium are extremely good at checking if you are actually cutting at the angle you think you are cutting at. The cutting angle is extremely easy to check after the cut. If you are not specifically testing your cutting angle skills, I would recommend that you stick to the 45-degree angle until you are very consistent with it. After that, move to whatever angles you actually use when fencing. As mentioned earlier, in my opinion, the 45-degree angle is not actually a very good cutting angle from a fencing perspective. This far, we have been doing the cuts from an overhead guard. It has our arms extended, removing the need to do so during the cut. However, from personal experience, I'd say that most longsword fencers prefer an on-the-shoulder variant of the high guard. As said, the over-the-head variant removes the need to extend our arms during the cut, thus going along the start simple add complexity concept. In addition to that, it is also safer from an user error perspective. With the on-the-shoulder variant, we have a sharp sword in the near vicinity of our head and shoulder, thus increasing the likelihood of an injury. As we also need to extend our arms, there is also the added risk of an overextension injury. Before you get scared of the possibility of cutting your head or shoulder with a sharp sword, let me make it clear that I have never heard anyone hurting themselves in this manner. What I have seen is people making these mistakes with feathers when sparring, and those people sometimes include me. What this means is that you have to pay more attention to how you handle a sharp sword when it is near your body. I presume this is also the reason why I have not heard anyone hurting themselves in this manner with a sharp sword. People tend to be more careful with sharp swords than with sword simulators, such as feathers. In addition to that, these mistakes also usually happen when sparring and also possibly tired. I still stand behind my principle that you should fence like you cut and you should cut like you fence. Because of this, these mistakes should not be made with sword simulators. These rules should be applied to your handling of sword simulators. Handle them as they were sharp. If this sounds like a new thing to you, I recommend that you go and watch my Handling Sharp Swords and Safety video. The link is in the description. Basically, all of these issues come from one simple mistake. People tend to have their hands too low. The very simple reason for this is that it conserves energy. Having your hands at chest height is way less tiring than having your hands above your shoulder. To fix all of the possible issues, you should have your hands near your ear. My rule of thumb is that when seen from the side, your hands should hide your ear. Now, what are these possible injury risks I mentioned? The first one is that people tend to rest their blade on their shoulder. With a sharp blade, this is obviously a bad idea. Even though a stationary blade without much pressure will not cut, a moving one will. The pulling or pushing motion might be caused by any number of reasons, such as a body feint or a quick change in direction. If you rest the flat of the blade on your shoulder, the risk is smaller, but you still might cut your neck. Even though the risk of injury is not too high, and the injury would probably not be that serious, I would still not rather cut myself in the first place. The second, and in my opinion the more severe one, is that you have to bring your sword past your head and specifically your ear when cutting. If you simply bring your hands forwards in a cutting motion, you risk cutting your head or your ear. With a simple descending cut, you might catch your ear, which is obviously not nice. What more often happens, and what has happened to me, is that you are on a guard on your dominant side and you want to make a cut from your non-dominant side, or vice versa. While bringing your sword to the other side of your head, you accidentally hit the side of your head. I have seen this happen multiple times, and as said, it has happened to me when sparring. To fix this, simply have your hands next to your ear. This way there is no blade moving past your head when cutting. As an added bonus, this is actually better from a cutting point of view. As you want to cut in a rotational motion, you cannot simply push your hands towards your target. If you have your hands at chest height, you actually need to bring them up before being able to deliver a proper cut. If you have your hands at ear height or a bit higher, this is not an issue. If these safety issues were new to you, I highly recommend that you go and watch my Handling Sharp Swords and Safety video. The link is in the description. Now that we have all of that out of the way, let's get to the actual exercise. These progressions follow very closely the progressions 2 through 5 of the basic exercise. I will simply outline the differences here and the new issues they might cause. This is how you form the starting position for this exercise. Take the starting position of the dominant side basic exercise. Now bring your hands next to your ear on the dominant side. To achieve this, you need to rotate your shoulders so that the non-dominant shoulder is slightly forward. Make sure the point doesn't sag behind. Have your elbows in a relaxed position near your body. You are now standing in the starting position of the following exercise. The first progression is basically the same as the second progression of the basic exercise. You will be powering the cut from your legs up and bracing and tightening your grip before extending your arms. Here is how to do the first progression. Stand in the starting position. Rotate your hips so that your chest points a bit less than 45 degrees to your dominant side. Keep your face towards your target in front of you. Tighten your grip. Brace your core. Fully extend your arms so that they are centered and your dominant hand is roughly at the same level as the top of your head. Angle your sword so that it is in line with the cutting trajectory. Power the rotation from your legs while bringing your arms down in a 45-degree angle. Let your structure stop your cut. Stop bracing and loosen your grip. Return to the starting position. Repeat. In this progression, it is important to concentrate on fully extending your arms and having them properly centered. Also make sure that you have your hands high enough. As said, your hands should be level with the top of your head. Your hands should be considerably more forward than with the basic exercise. We still want to cut at a 45-degree angle and hit our target at shoulder height. The most common issues are not having full extension and not having your edge properly aligned. The common causes and fixes for both have been explained before, so I will not go over them again. If need be, refer to the previous exercises. Continue training this progression until you can make the cut consistently. Cutting tatami with this progression is a bit more difficult than with the second progression of the basic exercise. This is because you bring your hands further forward when compared to the overhead variant. This gives you less time to accelerate the sword, making the cut more difficult. I would recommend that you start cutting media with the on the shoulder guard, only starting with the next progression. The second progression of this exercise matches the third progression of the basic exercise. We are now gripping and bracing while we are extending our arms. This is how you perform the progression. Stand in the starting position. Rotate your hips so that your chest points a bit less than 45 degrees to your dominant side. Keep your face towards your target in front of you. Rotate your wrists to bring your sword to a 45-degree angle. While extending your arms and correcting your edge alignment, tighten your grip and brace. Only start to tighten your grip and brace after you start to move your arms. Make sure your arms are fully extended and centered and your dominant hand is roughly at the same level as the top of your head. Power the rotation from your legs while bringing your arms down in a 45-degree angle. Let your structure stop your cut. Stop bracing and loosen your grip. Return to the starting position. Repeat. In the beginning, you can take your time to extend and position your arms so that you have enough time to properly grip and brace. After that, pause for a second and only 10 cut. As you start to learn to time your gripping and bracing, you can start to blend the extension of your arms and the cut to a single action. Being able to do the cut in one smooth motion from your shoulder greatly aids in power generation. The extension of the arms allows the sword to get up to speed, thus greatly increasing the cutting arc. This progression should become one of your staples. Between the on the shoulder and the overhead variants, dedicate most of your time to the one you actually use when fencing. Still, I recommend that you spend some time practicing both. If you do not fence, I recommend that you practice both in an equal manner. The third progression simply combines the fourth and fifth progressions of the basic exercise. Remember to train both methods of closing in and retreating from the target. Here is a quick reminder on how to perform this progression. Stand in the starting position some distance, such as 3 meters away from your target. Close in to the correct cutting distance. Stop. You should end up in a proper cutting stance without needing to shuffle your feet in place. Cut as explained in the previous progression and return to the starting position. Stop. Retreat from the target until you are where you started. The most common issues and fixes and the things to concentrate on are the same as for the progressions 4 and 5 of the basic exercise. Once again, all of these progressions can also be done from the non-dominant side, and you should train to cut from both sides. Remember to have your non-dominant foot forwards when cutting from your non-dominant side. Before we get to recap, go and stab that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Take your time to learn the exercises and the progressions. Do not try to advance too fast. Do not cut towards your leading leg with descending cuts before you are extremely consistent with stopping your cuts. I recommend that you do not do this before you learn point in line cuts. Listen to the swordwind to determine if your edge is aligned and how your power generation is. Videoing your training is extremely useful. Learn to cut at a 45-degree angle. Start with the overhead exercises and only after that move to other guards. Learn to return to a guard after a cut. Remember that proper extension and centering are extremely important. There are numerous ways to target a cut. Find a combination which feels natural to you.